type PL, or go to the Draw 2D polyline, take the defaults, and with your object snaps or entity snaps turned on, we want to snap to all four corners of our field. So there we have our polyline, and we need to offset that polyline by whatever the fill extension requirement is in your jurisdiction. We're going to use 5 feet because it's a nice round number. We'll go to Edit, Offset, but we don't want to use a standard offset. We want to use a command called Buffer Offset. And what this will do is it will round the corners for us, unlike standard offset, which would make the corners square. So Buffer Offset, and just like the standard offset command, it's asking us, well, how far? We're going to type 5. Now it says select the polyline to offset. And now it wants to know which side, so we're going to pick outside of the field. And there's our polyline. And you'll notice it has the rounded corners, which is a feature of the Buffer Offset command, as opposed to the standard offset. Now we can go back to the surface menu, select Design Pad Template. We've already set this dialog up, so we're going to say OK. We've already given it the lower and upper limits for the program to use in generating its surface, so we can just hit enter here, and we've answered this question. And now we're right back to where we were. It's asking us to pick the pad polyline. So we'll come back to our drawing area, we'll select that polyline, and now we're getting into the ratio, because we told it that we wanted to give it the information as a ratio. It wants to know, what is it? We want, in this case, a 3:1 overfill. So I'm going to say 3. And then it also asks you the cut ratio. Now we're not going to have any cuts in this example, so I'm going to give it 0. And in truth, it wouldn't matter what you gave it, because we're going to demonstrate that the field is elevated. There'll be no need for a cut. But I'm going to put in 0 just out of habit. And now it's asking a question that is a bit confusing, and it's not, at least it wasn't intuitive for me. It's asking the invert, or the lowest elevation for this pad. Now again, the term pad is one that was that is offered by Carlson. You can think of this as the perimeter of the fill extension, and I call it a fill extension because it extends at the same slope as the field beyond the edge of the perimeter of the field. And outside of this line we have the overfill slope, and that will be at that 3:1 that we just specified. And it wants to know, because we've told it it's sloping, what is the elevation, the lowest elevation of this pad? Well, we have to provide that number in some manner. Now, when I first started to use this command, I would actually do the math, which we could do. We would measure, we know what the elevation is over the center line of the field. I would measure the distance from the center line of the highest row to the edge of the pad or the fill extension, and then knowing the slope, I could actually work out what this elevation is. But I've found an easier way, and I think you'll find that it's acceptable. It won't be exact, but for proposed contours it'll be within a tenth or two, which is certainly acceptable. It knows that the contours here represent a surface, and when we told it that this was the polyline we were going to use, it calculated or estimated what the elevation of this line was. Now we know that this contour here represents 100, this one is 98, and this one is 96. So it's saying that it thinks that line is approximately at 97.06 relative elevation. But that would be the elevation of the original grade. We're going to be 2 feet higher than that. So we could just choose to add, and I do, 2 feet to the number that it offers. So let's do that. Let's just put in 99.1, and I round. And now it wants to know in which direction does the slope go from high to low, or the direction that we want to use for our proposed fill. Now it knows, because it's generated a surface based on the contours, it knows how the original grade topography is moving, but it wants to know how we want to contour this pad. I use snaps to do this. I'll pick, and it doesn't matter whether you use endpoint or midpoint, just as long as you're consistent in the following manner. I'm going to use midpoint. I'm going to snap to the midpoint of the highest elevation of the pad, and this is very important. You must make sure that you terminate this rubber band perpendicular to the polyline. So I'm going to select midpoint again, and you'll see it snaps right to the midpoint, and it almost instantly will draw for you the point at which the fill will intersect the existing terrain.